All right, back to the markets then. Yes, a weak start for the Indian markets, but indeed a lot of sectors that are going to be in focus. The question remains that what will happen to the chemical counters, which have a lot of dependence or rather exposure to the US markets. Along with that, some of the oil derivatives and players as well. So let's try to decode all of that. We have a whole host of experts with us, and let me welcome on board Ajay Joshi, who is the industry expert of chemicals. We have Mithaleshwar Thakur, who is the Secretary General of AEPC, as well as we also have the guest with us, and Peter McQuire is also here with us to understand more on the commodity front. But Ajay, let me first come to you and have your take rather. What does it really mean for the chemical counters, and which chemical companies, if you can help us understand, will be impacted the most? Because we understand a lot of these Indian players have more than 30% of their revenue coming in from US.
Yes, good morning. I think the 25% tariffs are not yet final. I think Mr. Trump has always gone back on his words. So let's see. But if the 25% tariffs persist, a couple of Indian chemical companies would be hit very hard. Companies like Vinati Organics, which export a lot of chemicals to the US market for oil and gas application, are fluorochemical, fluoro refrigerant gas companies, Navin Fluorine, Gujarat Fluoro, SRF, they would get affected adversely. Then we have companies like Aarti Industries and Lakshmi Organics, which are in the intermediates, which they export to the US market. So Vinati Organics, Navin, Gujarat Fluoro, Lakshmi and Aarti, these have more than 20% exposure to the US market in terms of their revenue. Then SRF is another company where we might see some challenges. So basically, the fluoro refrigerant gas companies as well as benzene derivative companies like Aarti, Vinati, Lakshmi, there we would see much impact because they are much more exposed to the US market. And with the 25% tariffs, these companies become non-competitive. Particularly vis-a-vis the EU market, the European Union only has 15% tariff. So I see this as a resurgence of the European chemical industry, and it would be challenging times for the Indian chemical exporters with regard to the US market.
Right, okay, Ajay, that's your take on the impact on players. But help us understand what end of the entire chemical basket could have the least impact given this tariff announcement, and how much do you think the impact on agrochemicals could be?
What my preliminary reading is that even when the Trump 1.0 era, that time, they had put tariffs on China, but couple of agrochemicals were exempted. So I do believe that during this time on the tariffs, the existing tariffs on India, certain agrochemicals would be exempted because US also cannot afford to put tariffs on everything. They cannot produce everything locally, particularly agrochemicals which have been net imported into the country. The agro companies there are not going to set up their plant. So I think agrochemicals would remain immune, as well as the contract manufacturing businesses would remain immune. Plus the pharma side, pharma intermediates, pharma APIs, there also I think that exemption would be there. Apart from that, certain flavor and fragrance chemicals, for example, there's a chemical called vanillin for vanilla flavor. There, US has already put anti-dumping duty on Chinese suppliers. They do not want to buy from China. Currently from India, Camlin Fine Chem and other companies export this chemical to the US. So I don't see any tariffs getting put on these companies. So I think flavor and fragrance chemicals, agrochemicals, pharma intermediates, APIs, these would remain exempted because US does need a trade partner and China is not the only option there.
Yeah, absolutely. But, Ajay, the double whammy that the China angle could bring about here, talk to us in a little greater detail about it. Because what one could fear perhaps is more flooding of Chinese chemicals in the Indian market too.
Yes, I think not only in the Indian market, but also in the Latin American market, African market, the other export destinations for Indian exporters, because, Trump is trying to curb both China and India, both the Asian economies. So that would mean that India and China would end up competing with each other in the rest of the world. So yes, the Chinese dumping might become another challenging factor for the Indian exporters in the non-US markets. But I think let's see how the tariffs on China play out. We do not have any firm decision on US tariffs on China as of now. But if China tariffs are lower, it could be detrimental to India with regard to the US market as well as for the rest of the markets. So let's see, how the China situation plays out.
Absolutely. But great to have you on the show, Ajay. Thanks so much for always accommodating our interview request. Good to get in that color that should this 25% tariff be actually implemented, what could it really mean for the chemical sector? But I think the bigger impact is really going to be on government and exporters, and especially given that this is